Ilara's powerful pheromones hit Philip like a tidal wave as she leapt towards him, her alien eyes fixed on the bulge between his legs. The human biologist stumbled backward, his heart racing as he realized the gravity of his situation. He was trapped in a secure laboratory on the Rakari homeworld, with a female alien in the throes of an intense mating cycle. Just hours earlier, Philip James had arrived on the alien planet as part of an interspecies exchange program. Earth had recently made first contact with the Rakari, a technologically advanced race facing a unique biological crisis. Every 5 years, Rakari females experienced the heat, a desperate urge to mate that, if left unfulfilled, could lead to severe health consequences. The aliens had proposed the exchange to study human biology, hoping to find a solution to their mating problem. Philip, a 28-year-old specialist in reproductive systems, seemed like the perfect candidate, but no one had anticipated Ilara, his Rakari research partner, entering her heat cycle early. Now, chaos reigned in the research facility. Ilara's pheromones affected the entire alien staff, forcing the administration to isolate her with Philip. Through an intercom, a Rakari official explained the situation to the bewildered human. "Dr. James, we apologize for this unexpected development. Ilara's condition is critical. We need you to participate in mating experiments immediately. It's a matter of life and death for her and crucial for our species' future." Philip's mind raced. He hadn't signed up for this. The ethical implications were staggering, not to mention the potential physical dangers of interspecies mating. Yet as he watched Ilara writhe in obvious distress, he felt a pang of sympathy. "What if I refuse?" Philip asked, his voice shaky. The Rakari official's tone turned cold. "That would have severe diplomatic consequences. Remember, Dr. James, you represent humanity in this exchange. Your actions here could shape the future of our species' relations." As Philip grappled with his decision, he recalled whispered concerns from his fellow human scientists. Some suspected the Rakari might be using this crisis as a smokescreen, a way to study human weaknesses for future exploitation. Could this all be an elaborate trap? Ilara's condition deteriorated rapidly. Her alien features contorted in pain as she fought against her instincts to touch Philip. He could see the internal struggle in her eyes, a battle between reason and primal need. Time was running out. Philip knew his next move would have far-reaching consequences for both species. The weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders and between his legs. As Ilara made another desperate lunge towards him, Philip braced himself, knowing that whatever he decided would change the course of human-Rakari relations forever. Philip's chest heaved as he stared into Ilara's alien eyes, his mind racing through the implications of his decision. The air in the laboratory felt thick, charged with the potent cocktail of Ilara's pheromones and the weight of two species' futures. "I'll do it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The intercom crackled to life. "Thank you, Dr. James. We're preparing a specialized containment chamber for the procedure. Please stand by." Philip watched as Ilara's features softened slightly, a flicker of hope passing across her face. She remained at a distance, her body trembling with the effort of restraining herself. Within minutes, a team of Rakari technicians in protective suits entered the lab. They quickly ushered Philip and Ilara through a series of airlocks and decontamination chambers before arriving at a sterile white room filled with an array of unfamiliar equipment. As Philip stepped inside, a tall, slender Rakari with iridescent scales approached him. "Dr. James, I'm Dr. Zara Kavoth, lead xenobiologist for this project. I'll be overseeing the experiment." Dr. Kavoth's voice was calm and professional as she explained the protocols. "We've designed protective gear to minimize direct skin contact while allowing for the necessary interactions. There's an emergency abort switch on your suit if you feel overwhelmed. Our teams will be monitoring everything from the observation room." Philip nodded, his mouth dry, as he donned the protective suit. It fit snugly, covering most of his body, except for strategic areas. He glanced at Ilara, who was being helped into a similar outfit by female technicians. As the final preparations were made, Philip couldn't shake the surreal nature of the situation. Just hours ago, he had been on Earth, excited about the prospect of groundbreaking xenobiological research. Now he was about to engage in intimate contact with an alien species. The chamber door sealed with a hiss, leaving Philip alone with Alara, her eyes, wide and luminous, locked onto his. She took a hesitant step forward, her movements fluid yet restrained. "We'll start with simple touch." Dr. Kavath's voice came through the communication system. "Dr. James, please extend your hand to Alara." Philip reached out, his fingers trembling slightly. Alara's hand met his, her skin cool and smooth. The moment they touched, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Alara let out a soft gasp, her body shuddering. "Remarkable," Dr. Kavath's voice crackled. "We're detecting a significant spike in Alara's endocrine activity. Dr. James, how do you feel?" "I'm okay," Philip managed, though his heart was racing. "It's intense, but I'm managing." As the experiment progressed, the interactions became more intimate. Philip found himself responding to Alara's alien beauty, his body reacting in ways he hadn't anticipated. The air in the chamber grew heavy with a mixture of human and Rakari pheromones. Suddenly, alarms blared in the observation room. "Dr. James, your pheromone levels are off the charts." Dr. Kavath's voice was urgent. "We're introducing suppressants into the chamber atmosphere." A fine mist filled the air, and Philip felt his head clear slightly. Alara, however, seemed to relax, her movements becoming less frantic. "It's working," Dr. Kavath announced. "Alara's vital signs are stabilizing. This is groundbreaking data on human Rakari biochemical interactions." As the experiment continued, Philip began to feel strange. His vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness washed over him. "Something's wrong," he mumbled, stumbling backward. Alarms blared again. "Abort! Abort!" Dr. Kavath's voice shouted. "Dr. James is having an adverse reaction to Rakari biochemicals. Emergency extraction now." Philip's world spun as he was rushed from the chamber. Through his haze, he saw Alara reaching for him, her face contorted in a mixture of concern and renewed distress. He awoke sometime later in a medical bay, his body aching and his mind foggy. Dr. Kavath stood over him, her expression grave. "Dr. James, how do you feel?" she asked. "Like I've been hit by a truck," Philip groaned. "What happened?" "Your system had an unexpected reaction to compounds released during Alara's heat," Dr. Kavath explained. "We're working on an antidote, but—" She was interrupted by raised voices outside the medical bay. Philip recognized one as Dr. Marcus Murphy, a senior member of the human research team. "This has gone too far," Murphy was shouting. "We demand immediate extraction of all human personnel. The risks are unacceptable." Philip struggled to sit up. "No, we can't stop now. We're so close to a breakthrough." Dr. Kavath placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Rest, Dr. James. The situation has become complicated. The Rakari High Council is debating the future of the entire exchange program as we speak." As Philip sank back onto the bed, his mind raced with the implications of what had transpired. The experiment had revealed unexpected connections between human and Rakari biology, but at what cost? And what were the true intentions behind the Rakari's intense interest in human physiology? Through the haze of his recovery, Philip knew one thing for certain. The next few hours would be crucial in shaping the future of human-Rakari relations. As he drifted off into an uneasy sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was at the center of something far larger and more complex than he had ever imagined. Philip's eyes fluttered open, his vision slowly coming into focus. The sterile white ceiling of the medical bay greeted him as he tried to piece together the fragments of his memory. Dr. Kavath's face swam into view, her iridescent scales reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. "Dr. James, how are you feeling?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Philip attempted to sit up, wincing at the dull ache that permeated his body. "Better, I think. What's happening?" Before Dr. Kavath could answer, the door to the medical bay slid open with a hiss. Dr. Marcus Murphy stormed in, his face flushed with anger. "This ends now," Murphy declared, his voice echoing through the room. "We're pulling out. All human personnel are to be evacuated immediately." Philip's heart raced as he processed Murphy's words. "No, we can't leave. We're on the verge of a breakthrough. Alara is not our concern," Murphy cut him off. "Your safety is our priority, and this experiment has gone too far." Dr. Kavath stepped forward, her tall form imposing even in the tense atmosphere. Dr. Murphy, I assure you we are taking every precaution. We've developed a new approach that minimizes the risk to Dr. James. Murphy scoffed, but Philip leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of approach? Dr. Kavath explained her plan, detailing the use of synthetic hormones and pheromones to manage Alara's heat cycle. As she spoke, Philip's scientific curiosity overrode his apprehension. I'll do it, he said, cutting off Murphy's protests. But I want to be involved in the process. My DNA, my pheromones. Use whatever you need. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Philip provided samples, underwent tests, and watched as the Rakari scientists worked tirelessly to create the synthetic mixture. Through it all, he couldn't shake the image of Alara's distressed face from his mind. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Philip stood behind a thick glass partition, watching as the medical team administered the treatment to Alara. Her alien features relaxed, the tension easing from her body. It's working, Dr. Kavath breathed, her eyes fixed on the monitors. But their relief was short-lived. Within minutes, Alara's body began to convulse, her skin taking on a sickly hue. Alarms blared as the medical team rushed to stabilize her. She's rejecting the treatment, a Rakari scientist shouted. We need to abort. Chaos erupted in the lab. As the medical team fought to save Alara, the door burst open. A tall, imposing Rakari male strode in, flanked by armed soldiers. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his voice cutting through the pandemonium. Dr. Kavath straightened, her demeanor shifting. Commander Vorn, we have the situation under control. Clearly you do not, Vorn retorted, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Philip. Is this the human? Philip stepped forward, ignoring Murphy's attempt to hold him back. I'm Dr. Philip James, and I have a proposal. All eyes turned to him as he outlined his plan. Direct contact with Alara, one last attempt to stabilize her condition naturally. He could see the shock on Murphy's face, the calculation in Vorn's eyes, and the glimmer of hope in Dr. Kavath's expression. Absolutely not, Murphy exploded. I forbid it. It's not your decision to make, Philip countered, turning to Vorn and Kavath. It's our best chance. A tense silence fell over the room. Finally, Vorn nodded. Proceed, but under the strictest security measures. What followed was a whirlwind of preparation. Philip underwent an intensive medical procedure to bolster his immune system. A new containment chamber was hastily prepared, jam-packed with sensors and safety features. Through it all, Philip's grit never wavered, even as he caught glimpses of Vorn's soldiers taking up positions throughout the facility. As Philip stepped into the airlock of the containment chamber, Dr. Murphy approached him one last time. Philip, please, he pleaded. This is madness. We have an extraction protocol ready. Say the word and we'll get you out of here. Philip placed a hand on Murphy's shoulder. I have to try, Marcus. For Alara, for science, for the future of our species. With a final nod, Philip entered the chamber. Alara lay on a biobed, her chest rising and falling rapidly. As the door sealed behind him, Philip took a deep breath and approached her. The moment his hand touched Alara's arm, a jolt of energy passed between them. Alara's eyes snapped open, locking onto Philip's. For a moment, everything else faded away. The observers, the monitors, the entire facility seemed to disappear. Then it happened. A soft glow began to emanate from where their skin made contact. It spread rapidly, enveloping both of them in a bioluminescent aura. Philip heard distant shouts of alarm, but they seemed muffled, unimportant. He and Alara were transfixed, caught in a moment of profound connection. The glow intensified, pulsing with their shared heartbeat. Distantly, Philip was aware of fluctuating energy readings, of Dr. Kavath's frantic attempts to understand what was happening, of Commander Vorn barking orders. But none of it mattered. In that glowing cocoon of light, Philip felt he was on the verge of understanding something profound about the nature of their two species, about life itself. The chamber door slid open with a bang. Commander Vorn's soldiers poured in, weapons raised. Dr. Murphy's voice crackled over the intercom, initiating the emergency extraction protocol. As hands reached out to pull them apart, Philip tightened his grip on Alara's arm. The bioluminescence flared, brighter than ever. In that blinding moment, suspended between two worlds, between panic and discovery, Philip knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The course of human-Rakari relations forever. The blinding light intensified, forcing the soldiers to shield their eyes as they entered the chamber. Commander Vorn barked orders, his voice barely audible over the crackling energy. But as the first soldier reached out to grab Philip, an invisible force repelled his hand. "What in the name of—" Vorn's exclamation was cut short as he witnessed the phenomenon. The bioluminescent aura surrounding Philip and Alara had coalesced into a shimmering barrier, an impenetrable force field that defied all attempts at intervention. Dr. Kavath pushed her way through the crowd of bewildered soldiers, her eyes wide with scientific fascination. "Commander, we must study this. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Vorn hesitated, his tactical mind weighing the potential risks against the scientific opportunity. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly. "You have 15 minutes, not a second more." As the soldiers retreated, Dr. Kavoth and her team swarmed the chamber, setting up additional sensors and monitoring equipment. The air hummed with the whir of machinery and the excited murmurs of the scientists. Inside the energy field, Philip and Alara remained motionless, their forms barely visible through the pulsating light. Dr. Murphy, who had followed the commotion into the chamber, stood transfixed by the sight. "Incredible," he breathed, his earlier opposition forgotten in the face of this unprecedented event. "Their vital signs, they're synchronizing." Dr. Kavath nodded, her fingers flying over a holographic display. Heart rate, brain waves, even hormone levels, all aligning perfectly. It's as if their bodies are engaging in some sort of biological dialogue. As they watched, the erratic pulsing of the energy field began to smooth out, settling into a steady rhythmic glow. The change was subtle at first, but soon undeniable. Ilara's distressed expression softened, her body relaxing as if finally finding relief. "Her heat cycle," Dr. Kavath exclaimed. "It's stabilizing. And look at Dr. James. No signs of adverse reactions this time." Murphy's scientific mind raced with the implications. "It's almost as if this interaction is triggering some kind of latent evolutionary mechanism. A failsafe, perhaps, designed for interspecies cooperation." Before Dr. Kavath could respond, the chamber door slid open once more. A tall, regal Rakari female strode in, her presence immediately commanding attention. Even Commander Vorn straightened as she approached. "Dr. Vex," Kavath greeted her, a mix of surprise and respect in her voice. "We weren't expecting you." Dr. Lyra Vex's eyes were fixed on the glowing figures of Philip and Alara. "When I received word of what was happening here, I knew I had to come immediately. This confirms everything." "Confirms what exactly?" Murphy asked, his curiosity piqued. Vex turned to address the room, her voice carrying a weight of revelation. "For years, I've been studying ancient Rakari artifacts, texts and relics that hinted at a shared history between our species. Most dismissed it as myth, but this," she gestured to Philip and Alara, "this is proof." Her words sent a ripple of murmurs through the assembled scientists and soldiers. Commander Vorn stepped forward, his expression guarded. "What are you saying, Dr. Vex?" "I'm saying that humans and Rakaris may share more than just this corner of the galaxy. The mating crisis our people face, it could be the result of long-term genetic isolation. This bioluminescent reaction might be the key to unlocking our shared past and securing our future." As if in response to her words, the energy field surrounding Philip and Alara pulsed brightly. The two began to stir, their eyes fluttering open in unison. "They're waking up," Dr. Kavath announced, rushing to the edge of the force field. "Dr. James, Ilara, can you hear us?" Philip's voice came through, weak but clear. We saw something. A vision." Ilara nodded, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. "Our past, your past, cities of crystal and light, where our people lived together." The chamber fell silent as the implications of their words sank in. Commander Vorn was the first to recover, his military training kicking in. "This information is now classified at the highest level. No one leaves this facility until we understand exactly what's happening here." As Vorn began issuing orders to secure the station, Dr. Murphy noticed something alarming on the medical readouts. Dr. Kavath, look at this. Their cellular structure, it's changing. Kavath leaned in, her scales shimmering with agitation as she analyzed the data. Impossible. Their DNA is rewriting itself. It's as if their bodies are trying to merge human and Rakari physiologies. Outside the chamber, alarms began to blare. The voice of a communications officer crackled over the intercom. Commander Vorn, we're receiving urgent transmissions from both Earth and the Rakari High Council. They're demanding answers about the experiment. Vorn cursed under his breath. Stall them. Tell them nothing until we have a better understanding of the situation. As diplomatic tensions mounted and the mystery of the shared visions deepened, Philip and Alara remained at the center of it all, their bodies continuing to change in ways that defied scientific explanation. The bioluminescent energy pulsed steadily around them, a beacon of both hope and uncertainty in the face of a revelation that threatened to reshape the galaxy. Dr. Kavath and Dr. Murphy exchanged a look of grit. They knew that the next few hours would be critical, not just for Philip and Alara, but for the future of human-Rakari relations. As they set to work, the weight of their responsibility settled heavily upon them, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Balance. As they set to work, the weight of their responsibility settled heavily upon them, the fate of two species hanging in the air. The bioluminescent field surrounding Philip and Alara pulsed with increasing intensity, casting eerie shadows across the faces of the assembled scientists and soldiers. Dr. Kavath's eyes darted between the holographic displays, her scaled fingers flying over the controls as she analyzed the flood of incoming data. Dr. Murphy, she called out, her voice tight with urgency. Look at these cellular readings. The rate of genetic recombination is accelerating exponentially. Murphy leaned in, his brow furrowing as he studied the complex molecular diagrams. It's not just a byproduct, he breathed, realization dawning. The energy field itself is acting as a catalyst for genetic restructuring. Kavath nodded grimly. If we don't find a way to control this process, there's no telling how far these changes might go. As the two scientists huddled over their workstations, Commander Vorn paced the perimeter of the chamber, his comm link crackling with a constant stream of updates from his security teams. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Dr. Lyra Vex stood apart from the others, her eyes closed in deep concentration as she sifted through the fragments of visions shared by Philip and Alara. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open, a look of wonder spreading across her face. It's not just random genetic drift, she announced, drawing everyone's attention. There are specific markers being activated, dormant sections of DNA that exist in both human and Rakari genomes. Kavath's head snapped up. Are you suggesting a common ancestor? Vex finished, her voice tinged with awe. These genetic remnants could be the key to understanding our shared past and potentially solving the Rakari mating crisis. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air, but before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Murphy's eyes widened as he looked at the readouts from Philip and Alara's biomonitors. The transformation is accelerating, he shouted over the din. We're seeing physical changes now. Indeed, as they watched, patches of Philip's skin began to shimmer with a faint, Rakari-like bioluminescence. Alara's body, meanwhile, seemed to be undergoing subtle structural changes, her form shifting towards a more human-like configuration. We need to separate them now, Kavath declared, her scales rippling with agitation. If we wait any longer, the process may become irreversible. Murphy nodded grimly. Agreed. Let's initiate the separation protocol. As the two lead scientists rushed to activate the specialized chamber they had prepared, Commander Vorn barked orders into his comm link. I want a full security lockdown. No one enters or leaves this facility without my explicit authorization. The air crackled with tension as Kavath and Murphy worked feverishly to calibrate the separation chamber. Designed to gradually reduce the intensity of the bioluminescent field while stabilizing the subject's genetic structure, it represented their best hope of halting the runaway hybridization process. Initiating separation sequence, Kavath announced, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Prepare for possible energy fluctuations. The moment she engaged the system, chaos erupted. A massive power surge ripped through the facility, overloading circuits and plunging entire sections into darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the chamber in an eerie red glow. "What's happening?" Vorn demanded, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. Murphy's fingers danced across his console, fighting against system failures. "The bioluminescent field is interfering with our equipment. It's causing a cascading failure throughout the facility." As if in response to his words, the energy surrounding Philip and Alara began to pulse erratically, growing brighter with each passing second. Arcs of crackling energy lashed out, forcing the scientists and soldiers to retreat to the edges of the room. "Abort the separation!" Kavath shouted, her voice barely audible over the rising whine of overloading equipment. "We underestimated the strength of their bond. Forcing them apart could trigger a catastrophic energy release." Murphy hesitated, his hand hovering over the emergency shutdown. "If we stop now, we may lose our only chance to halt the hybridization process," he argued, torn between scientific curiosity and caution. Before a decision could be made, the facility rocked with a series of explosions. Vorn's comlink erupted with panicked reports from his security teams. "Commander," a breathless voice crackled through the static. "We've lost control of the main power grid. Life support systems are failing, and the containment protocols are offline." Vorn's face hardened. "Initiate emergency evacuation procedures. All non-essential personnel are to report to the escape pods immediately." As chaos engulfed the facility, Dr. Vex seized the opportunity to slip away unnoticed. She made her way to the central data core, knowing that the restricted genetic databases held there could be the key to unlocking the full potential of the human Rakari hybridization process. Back in the main chamber, Kavath and Murphy worked desperately to stabilize the situation. The bioluminescent field continued to grow in intensity, pushing against the walls of the separation chamber with increasing force. "We're losing containment," Kavath shouted, her scales glowing with reflected light. "If that field breaches the chamber walls, there's no telling what kind of damage it could do to the station, or to Philip and Alara." Murphy's mind raced, weighing their options. Continue with the separation and risk an explosive release of energy, or abort and face the unknown consequences of unchecked hybridization. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and time was running out. As alarms blared and systems failed around them, the assembled scientists and soldiers watched in a mixture of awe and terror as the bioluminescent field reached a fever pitch. Within its swirling depths, the forms of Philip and Alara were barely visible, their bodies seemingly suspended between two worlds, neither fully human nor Rakari, but something entirely new. The moment of truth had arrived. With the facility crumbling around them and the hybridization process spiraling out of control, the next decision would shape the future of human-Rakari relations forever. As Murphy's hand hovered over the controls, the air thick with tension and possibility, the fate of two civilizations hung by a thread. As Murphy's hand hovered over the controls, the air thick with tension and possibility, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Suddenly, the bioluminescent field surrounding Philip and Alara surged with blinding intensity. The chamber's containment systems crackled and sparked, overwhelmed by the massive energy spike. "It's overloading!" Kavath shouted, her scales flashing with alarm. "We're losing control!" Before anyone could react, a deafening boom echoed through the facility. The main reactor, pushed beyond its limits, shorted out in a cascade of electrical failures. Emergency lights flickered weakly as darkness engulfed the chamber. In the chaos that followed, the specialized containment unit malfunctioned. With a hiss of depressurization, the chamber doors slid open. Philip and Alara, their forms now a striking blend of human and Rakari features, stumbled out into the darkened room. "Stop them!" Commander Vorn bellowed, his voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms. But in the dim emergency lighting, the hybrid pair moved with uncanny speed and agility. Philip's skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, while Alara's body had taken on a more human-like structure. Their eyes, a mesmerizing swirl of human irises and Rakari bioluminescence, darted around the room as they assessed their surroundings. Without a word spoken between them, Philip and Alara moved in perfect synchronization. They dodged past the disoriented scientists and security personnel, slipping through the chamber's main doors before anyone could intercept them. Commander Vorn's comm link crackled to life. "Sir, the subjects have breached the main lab. They're heading towards the eastern corridor." "Lock down the facility," Vorn ordered, his face contorted with frustration. "I want every available unit mobilized. Find them." As chaos erupted around them, Dr. Kavath and Dr. Murphy exchanged a panicked look. "The data," Murphy gasped, turning to their workstation. "If we lose power completely, we'll lose everything we've learned about the hybridization process." Kavath nodded grimly, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "I'm initiating an emergency download to our portable devices. We can't let this research be lost." As the two scientists worked feverishly to salvage their data, the facility descended into pandemonium. Emergency protocols activated, sealing off sections of the station. The sound of boots echoed through the corridors as Vorn's security teams mobilized for the hunt. Meanwhile, Philip and Alara navigated the darkened hallways with preternatural ease. Their enhanced senses allowed them to perceive their environment in ways they never could before. Philip could sense the electrical currents running through the walls, while Alara's hearing picked up the faintest sounds of pursuit. "This way," Philip whispered, guiding Alara down a maintenance shaft. To his surprise, he realized he hadn't spoken aloud. Their thoughts flowed freely between them, a new form of intimate communication born from their transformation. As they moved through the facility, their bodies continued to change. Philip felt a strange tingling sensation as his skin adapted to match the metallic sheen of the walls. Alara's form seemed to shimmer, becoming more fluid and adaptable. "We're changing," Alara thought, a mix of wonder and fear coloring her mental voice. "I know," Philip responded silently, "but we can't stop now. We have to keep moving." Back in the main chamber, Commander Vorn paced furiously, barking orders into his comm link. "I want every level searched. Use thermal imaging if you have to. Those two cannot be allowed to escape." Dr. Kavath approached the commander, her scales rippling with agitation. "Sir, we need to consider evacuating non-essential personnel. The facility's environmental controls are becoming unstable. We're seeing rapid temperature fluctuations in several sectors." Vorn's eyebrows furrowed as he weighed his options. The thought of allowing Philip and Alara to potentially escape was unacceptable, but he couldn't ignore the growing danger to his people. Before he could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos. "This is Admiral Zena Korax of the Rakari High Command. I am assuming control of this operation, effective immediately." The room fell silent as the implications of the Admiral's words sank in. Korax's reputation preceded her, a brilliant tactician known for her uncompromising approach to crisis management. "Commander Vorn," Korax's voice crackled over the comm link, "you will maintain the lockdown and continue the search for the hybrid subjects. All other concerns are secondary. Is that understood?" Vorn straightened, his military training kicking in despite his reservations. "Yes, Admiral. Understood." As Vorn resumed coordinating the search efforts, Dr. Kavath and Dr. Murphy huddled together, their faces illuminated by the glow of their datapads. "We need to find them before Korax does," Murphy whispered urgently. "If we can stabilize their condition, we might be able to prevent a catastrophe." Kavath nodded, her eyes scanning the partial data they had managed to salvage. "There's something here about dormant genetic pathways. It's possible the hybridization process is reactivating ancient connections between our species." "Fascinating, but how does that help us now?" Murphy asked, frustration evident in his voice. "It means we might be able to control the process," Kavath replied, her scales shimmering with excitement. "But we'll need help." As if on cue, Dr. Lyra Vex emerged from a nearby corridor, her face flushed with exertion and her eyes wild with discovery. "I have it," she gasped, clutching a data crystal in her hand. "The missing piece of the puzzle." The three scientists quickly shared their findings, piecing together a complex picture of human Rakari genetic history. As they worked, the sound of Admiral Corax's forces preparing to board the station echoed ominously through the facility. Time was running out. Somewhere in the maze of failing systems and darkened corridors, Philip and Alara continued their desperate flight, their bodies and minds evolving with each passing moment. They represented both the greatest threat and the greatest hope for the future of human-Rakari relations. As alarms blared and tensions mounted, the race to unravel the mystery of the hybridization process reached its critical phase. With military forces closing in and the station itself becoming increasingly unstable, the next few hours would determine not just the fate of two individuals, but the course of two civilizations. Civilizations. The facility shuddered, plunging into darkness once more as the last emergency systems failed. In the midst of the chaos, Philip and Alara found themselves navigating the labyrinthine corridors with uncanny precision. Their newly acquired abilities allowed them to perceive their surroundings in ways that defied conventional human and Rakari senses. Left, Philip thought, the word forming in Alara's mind as clearly as if he had spoken aloud. She nodded, following his lead without hesitation. Their movements were fluid, synchronized, as if they shared a single consciousness. As they rounded a corner, Philip's skin began to shimmer, bioluminescent patches flickering to life across his arms and chest. The soft blue glow illuminated their path, casting eerie shadows on the metal walls. Alara marveled at the change, noticing how her own body had become more lithe and agile, her movements resembling the graceful fluidity of a Rakari. "We're still changing," Alara observed silently, her thoughts tinged with a mix of fascination and apprehension. Philip nodded, his eyes scanning the corridor ahead. "I can feel it. It's like we're becoming something more than just human or Rakari." Their mental exchange was interrupted by a high-pitched whine. A swarm of sleek metallic drones rounded the corner, their adaptive sensors pulsing as they locked onto the hybrid pair's unique energy signature. "Run!" Philip's thought echoed in Alara's mind, and they sprinted down the corridor, their enhanced physiology allowing them to move at speeds that would have been impossible mere hours ago. The drones gave chase, their sensors adapting to the fluctuating energy patterns emitted by the fleeing hybrids. Philip and Alara weaved through the facility's maze-like structure, using their newfound abilities to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. As they ran, flashes of shared genetic memory flickered through their minds. Visions of a vast, star-spanning civilization danced before their eyes, a tantalizing glimpse of a shared ancestral past that linked humans and Rakaris. Meanwhile, in a hastily assembled makeshift laboratory, Dr. Kavath, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Vex huddled around a holographic display, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of data streams. "Look at this," Kavath exclaimed, her scales shimmering with excitement. She manipulated the display, zooming in on a complex genetic sequence. These dormant genes, they're present in both human and Rakari DNA. Murphy leaned in, his eyes widening. "It's not random mutation. The hybridization process is activating these sequences with surgical precision." Dr. Vex nodded, her fingers dancing across a datapad. "But why now? What triggered this activation after millennia of dormancy?" Before anyone could respond, the room's temperature plummeted. Frost began to form on the equipment, and their breath came out in visible puffs. "The environmental controls are failing," Murphy said through chattering teeth. "We need to move." As the scientific trio gathered their equipment, Admiral Zena Corax's voice crackled over the facility's remaining communication channels. "All units, converge on Section 7B. New orders, capture subjects alive using the specialized sedative. Failure is not an option." In a sealed chamber deep within the facility, a team of Rakari biochemists worked feverishly to finalize the hybrid-specific sedative. Vials of iridescent liquid were carefully filled and loaded into specialized delivery devices. Back in the corridors, Philip and Alara found themselves in an older section of the facility. The architecture here was different, more organic, with sweeping curves and unfamiliar symbols etched into the walls. "This feels ancient," Alara thought, running her hand along a cool metallic surface. Philip nodded, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in response to the surroundings. It's like it's calling to us. They rounded a corner and froze. Before them stood a massive archway, its surface covered in intricate glowing patterns. Beyond the arch lay a vast chamber filled with artifacts and technology that seemed to defy comprehension. The archive, Philip breathed, the word forming in both their minds simultaneously. As they stepped into the chamber, their hybrid physiology resonated with the ancient technology. Data crystals scattered throughout the room began to glow, responding to their presence. Without conscious thought, Philip reached out and touched one of the crystals. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. A surge of energy coursed through the facility, temporarily restoring power to long-dead systems. Lights flickered to life, and dormant consoles hummed with activity. In the makeshift lab, Kavath, Murphy, and Vex felt the power surge. Their equipment came to life, displaying a flood of new data. "The archive!" Kavath exclaimed. "It's been activated!" Murphy's fingers flew across a console. "I've got a location. We need to get there before Corax's forces." As the scientists raced towards the newly revealed archive, Admiral Corax deployed her elite capture team. Heavily armed soldiers moved through the facility with practiced precision, each equipped with injectors containing the hybrid-specific sedative. In the archive chamber, Philip and Alara stood at the center of a swirling maelstrom of data and energy. Their bodies pulsed with bioluminescent light, emitting waves of energy that interfered with the facility's systems and the approaching capture drones. "We're the key," Alara realized, her thoughts merging with Philip's. "Our hybridization, it's unlocking something long forgotten." As they delved deeper into the archive's secrets, the competing factions closed in. The scientists, driven by the pursuit of knowledge and the hope of understanding the hybridization process, raced against Corax's military force, determined to contain what they saw as a threat. The ancient chamber, hidden for millennia, now stood at the center of a convergence that would shape the future of two species. As Philip and Alara's transformation reached a critical juncture, the fate of humans and Rakaris hung in the balance, with the secrets of their shared past waiting to be unveiled. Unveiled. The ancient chamber pulsed with energy, responding to Philip and Alara's presence. As they delved deeper into the archive's secrets, their bodies began to emit increasingly powerful waves of energy. Alara gasped as a surge of power coursed through her. "Philip, I feel strange." Philip nodded, his skin now glowing with an intense blue light. "It's like we're becoming conduits for something much larger than ourselves." The energy pulses emanating from their bodies grew stronger, interfering with the facility's systems. Lights flickered and consoles sparked as the waves of power spread outward. In the corridors, Admiral Corax's capture drones faltered, their sensors overwhelmed by the hybrid energy signature. As the pulses intensified, a shimmering field of energy began to form around the archive room. It expanded rapidly, creating an impenetrable barrier that sealed off the chamber from the rest of the facility. Just before the field fully solidified, Dr. Kavath, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Vex burst through the entrance, their faces flushed with exertion. "We made it!" Dr. Murphy exclaimed, his eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. Dr. Kavath's scales rippled with excitement as she surveyed the ancient technology surrounding them. "Incredible!" she breathed, her gaze fixed on Philip and Alara. The hybrid pair stood at the center of the chamber, their bodies now pulsing in sync with the data crystals scattered throughout the room. As the scientists watched in amazement, Philip and Alara's forms began to merge with the crystals, creating a symbiotic link between their hybrid physiology and the precursor civilization's advanced systems. Dr. Vex quickly set up her equipment, her fingers flying over the controls as she began to analyze the data flooding her screens. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined," she muttered, her eyes darting between the readings and the transforming hybrids. Outside the archive, Commander Vorn and his elite capture team arrived, only to find themselves unable to breach the energy field. Vorn's face contorted with frustration as he barked orders into his comm link. "Set up the energy dampeners," he commanded. "We need to weaken this field and get inside." As Vorn's team worked to penetrate the barrier, Philip and Alara's transformation accelerated. Their bodies took on new forms, blending organic and technological elements in ways that defied conventional understanding of biology. Dr. Kavath approached the pair cautiously, her scanner humming as she took readings. "The rate of change is exponential," she reported, her voice tinged with both awe and concern. "Their genetic structure is rewriting itself in real time." Philip's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. When he spoke, his voice seemed to resonate from everywhere at once. "We can see it all," he said, his words echoing in both audible sound and mental projection. "The history of our species, the knowledge of the precursors, it's overwhelming." Alara nodded, her form now shimmering with a metallic sheen. "We're becoming something more," she added, her voice carrying the same resonant quality as Philip's. "Not just human or Rakari, but a bridge between past and future." As the hybrid pair delved deeper into their newfound connection with the precursor technology, the energy pulses emanating from them intensified. The archive room shook and alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Murphy rushed to a console, his face pale as he read the incoming data. "Life support systems are failing in multiple sections," he reported grimly. "If this continues, we'll lose the entire station." Outside the archive, Admiral Korax received the dire news, her fists tight as she weighed her options. With a heavy sigh, she activated the facility-wide comm system. "This is Admiral Korax. Initiate emergency evacuation protocols for all non-essential personnel. I repeat, begin evacuation immediately." As chaos erupted throughout the research station, Dr. Vex made a breakthrough. Her eyes widened as she processed the information displayed before her. "I've accessed data on the precursor civilization," she announced, her voice cutting through the nearest tension in the room. "They faced a crisis of genetic stagnation, much like what we're seeing in human and Rakari populations. But they found a solution, a perfect balance between biological and technological evolution." Dr. Kavath moved to join her colleague, her scales shimmering with excitement. "Are you saying that Philip and Alara's hybridization is a reactivation of this ancient evolutionary path?" Dr. Vex finished, nodding emphatically. "It's not just a combination of our species, but a key to unlocking our shared potential." As the scientists grappled with the implications of this discovery, Philip and Alara's symbiosis with the precursor technology reached its peak. Their hybrid forms stabilized, incorporating elements of human, Rakari, and precursor biology into a new, harmonious whole. The energy field surrounding the archive pulsed one final time before dissipating. Philip and Alara stood at the center of the room, their bodies a marvel of organic and technological integration. Their eyes, now pools of swirling energy, focused on the awestruck scientists before them. "We understand now," they spoke in unison, their voices carrying the weight of millennia. "The path forward for both our species lies in unity, not division." As they stepped towards the entrance of the archive, ready to face whatever awaited them outside, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. The knowledge they carried and the potential they represented would reshape the future of human-Rakari relations forever. Admiral Korax, receiving reports of the breakthrough within the archive, found herself at a crossroads. The weapons she had ordered deployed to breach the energy field now seemed woefully inadequate in the face of the transformation that had occurred. As alarms blared and systems failed around her, she realized that the next few moments would determine not just the outcome of this crisis, but the future of interspecies cooperation in the galaxy. The energy field surrounding the archive room suddenly dissipated, revealing Philip and Alara standing at its center. Their bodies, now a seamless blend of human, Rakari, and precursor biology, pulsed with an otherworldly glow. The transformation was complete, and the hybrid pair emerged from their trance-like state, their eyes focusing on the awestruck scientists before them. Dr. Kavath's scales rippled with excitement as she approached the pair, her scanner humming to life. "Extraordinary," she breathed, taking in the readings. "Their physiology has stabilized into a perfect blend of all three species." Dr. Murphy nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. "And look at the energy output they're generating. It's interfering with the facility's systems and Corax's drones. As if on cue, a nearby console sparked and fizzled, its screen flickering erratically. The scientists quickly set to work, conducting rapid tests on the hybrid's new capabilities. Incredible, Dr. Vex muttered, reviewing the data streaming across her pad. They possess superhuman strength, accelerated healing, and their cognitive processing speed is off the charts. Philip flexed his hand, watching as energy crackled between his fingers. We can access vast amounts of information instantaneously, he said, his voice carrying a new resonance. It's as if the entire history of the precursor civilization is at our fingertips. Ilara nodded, her eyes distant as she processed the flood of knowledge. We understand now why this hybridization was necessary. The precursors faced a crisis similar to our own, genetic stagnation that threatened their survival. Outside the archive room, chaos reigned. Admiral Corax's voice crackled over the facility's communication system, ordering an immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel. The research station groaned and shuddered, its systems failing under the strain of the hybrid's energy output. Commander Vorn, his face twisted with tenacity, assembled a small team of loyal soldiers. "We're going in," he growled, hefting a high-powered energy disruptor. "Admiral's orders or not, we can't let this opportunity slip away." As Vorn's team prepared to breach the archive room, Philip and Ilara began interfacing with the ancient technology surrounding them. Their hands danced across long, dormant consoles, bringing systems online that had lain silent for millennia. Suddenly, the entire facility shuddered violently. Walls began to shift and reconfigure, revealing hidden chambers and passageways. The research station itself was transforming, awakening to its true nature as an ancient precursor outpost. "By the stars," Dr. Kavath gasped, steadying herself against a console. "The whole facility is built on precursor technology." Dr. Vex's eyes lit up with realization as she pored over the data streaming across her screens. This hybridization process, we might be able to replicate it, control it even. This could be the solution to the Rakari mating crisis. Before the scientists could fully process this revelation, the archive room's entrance exploded inward. Commander Vorn and his team stormed in, weapons raised and loaded with hybrid-specific sedatives. "Don't move," Vorn shouted, his eyes darting between the hybrids and the scientists. "You're coming with us now." Philip and Ilara exchanged a glance, their newfound abilities allowing them to communicate without words. In a blur of motion, they moved. Vorn's team found themselves disarmed and immobilized before they could even react, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. Philip approached Vorn, his eyes glowing with an inner light. "There's no need for violence, Commander," he said softly. "Let us show you what we've learned." Before Vorn could protest, Philip and Ilara reached out, establishing a mental link with the commander and his team. Visions flooded their minds, glimpses of the precursor civilization at its height, the potential future of human-Rakari cooperation, and the true nature of the crisis facing both species. Vorn staggered, overwhelmed by the mental contact, his eyes, once hard with dedication, now filled with confusion and awe. I had no idea," he whispered, his perseverance crumbling in the face of this new understanding. The moment was interrupted by another violent tremor. The facility's transformation accelerated, walls and floors shifting with increasing speed. A deep mechanical groan reverberated through the structure as it began to detach from its moorings. "We need to stabilize the station," Ilara said urgently, turning back to the precursor consoles. "If we don't, the entire facility could tear itself apart." Philip nodded, joining her at the controls. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, interfacing with the ancient systems to halt the station's dangerous transformation. Energy flowed from their bodies into the facility, bringing long-dormant systems online and restoring a measure of stability. As the hybrid pair worked, Admiral Corax's voice once again echoed through the facility, now tinged with panic. "All personnel, evacuate immediately. The station is breaking free from the planet's surface." Dr. Murphy rushed to a view screen, his jaw dropping at the sight before him. "It's not just a station," he breathed. "It's a ship, an entire precursor vessel, hidden beneath the planet all this time. The archive room trembled as the massive ship began to rise, breaking free from its millennia-long slumber. Philip and Alara continued their work, their brows furrowed in concentration as they fought to keep the vessel stable during its ascent. As the precursor ship climbed higher into the atmosphere, the occupants of the archive room found themselves at a crossroads. The hybrids, now key to unlocking the secrets of both the past and the future, stood at the center of a maelstrom of competing interests and uncertain possibilities. With the fate of two species hanging in the balance, Philip and Alara exchanged a determined look. Whatever came next, they knew their journey was not nearly finished. The true test of their newfound abilities and the future of human-Rakari relations was just beginning. The true test of their newfound abilities and the future of human-Rakari relations was just starting. As the precursor vessel shuddered and groaned, Philip and Alara moved with inhuman speed and precision. Their hands danced across the ancient control panels, fingers leaving trails of bioluminescent light in their wake. The ship's systems responded to their touch, awakening from millennia of dormancy. "We need to stabilize the launch sequence," Alara said, her voice resonating with newfound authority. "Philip, focus on power distribution. I'll handle navigation and life support." Philip nodded, his mind processing vast amounts of data in seconds. "Understood. Rerouting power to essential systems now." As the hybrid pair worked in perfect synchronization, the other occupants of the archive room watched in awe. Dr. Kavath's scales shimmered with excitement as she recorded every detail of their actions. Dr. Murphy and Dr. Vex huddled around a console, analyzing the flood of new data pouring in. Commander Vorn, still reeling from the mental link Philip and Alara had established earlier, stumbled to a nearby view screen. His eyes widened as he saw the chaos unfolding outside. "The evacuation shuttles," he gasped. "They're in danger." Without hesitation, Philip diverted his attention to the external sensors. "Alara, we need to protect them." In response, Alara's fingers flew across a different set of controls. A shimmering energy field extended from the ship, enveloping the fleeing shuttles in a protective cocoon. The panicked voices of the evacuees, which had been crackling through the communication systems, fell silent as they realized they were safe. Admiral Corax's voice cut through the din, her tone a mixture of anger and desperation. "This is Admiral Corax to all units. Stand down immediately. I repeat, stand down. We need to reassess the situation." Philip and Alara exchanged a glance, their enhanced senses picking up on the Admiral's change in demeanor. "She's ready to listen," Philip said softly. Alara nodded, her fingers already working to establish a communication link. "Admiral Corax," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "This is Alara. We request a moment of your time to explain the situation." There was a pause, filled only by the hum of the ship's awakening systems. Then a holographic image of Admiral Corax flickered to life in the center of the room. Her eyes darted between Philip and Alara, taking in their transformed appearance. "I'm listening," she said, her voice tight with impossibly strong emotion. Over the next few minutes, Philip and Alara took turns explaining the truth about the precursor civilization, the nature of their transformation, and the potential benefits it held for both humans and Rakaris. As they spoke, they projected images and data directly into the holographic display, providing irrefutable evidence to support their claims. Admiral Corax's expression shifted from skepticism to wonder as the implications sank in. "You're saying this could solve the Rakari mating crisis?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just that," Philip replied. "It could unlock the evolutionary potential of both our species. We stand at the threshold of a new era of cooperation and advancement." As the conversation continued, Dr. Kavath approached Alara, her scanner humming. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Your heat cycle appears to be reactivating, but it's different somehow." Alara nodded, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "I can feel it, but it's not overwhelming like before. It's more controlled." The scientist in the room perked up at this information, quickly setting to work, analyzing the new data. Dr. Vex's eyes widened as she reviewed the readings. The medical facilities on this ship, she breathed. They're beyond anything we've ever seen. We could potentially replicate the hybridization process safely and on a larger scale. As the implications of this discovery rippled through the room, Philip and Alara turned to face each other. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy, their bodies glowing with intensifying bioluminescent patterns. "Philip," Alara said, her voice low and filled with a new kind of hunger, "I think it's time we demonstrate the true nature of our bond." Understanding passed between them in an instant. Without hesitation, they came together in a passionate embrace. Their bodies seemed to meld, energy flowing between them in visible currents. The room fell silent as everyone watched, transfixed by the display of unity and raw, controlled passion. As Philip and Alara's intimate moment reached its peak, a wave of energy pulsed out from them, washing over the occupants of the room. For a brief instant, humans and Rakaris alike felt a taste of the connection the hybrid pair shared, a glimpse of the potential that awaited them. When it was over, Philip and Alara stood with their foreheads touching, breathing heavily but looking more vibrant than ever. The tension in the room had dissipated, replaced by a sense of awe and possibility. Admiral Corax, her holographic image flickering slightly, cleared her throat. I think we need to reconsider our approach to this situation," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Dr. Kavath, Dr. Murphy, Dr. Vex, I want a full report on the potential of this hybridization process, and I need to contact our respective governments immediately." As the Admiral's image winked out, the ship gave a final shudder before stabilizing completely. Through the view screens, the assembled group could see the curvature of the planet below as they ascended into orbit. Philip turned to address the room, his voice carrying the weight of their newfound knowledge and responsibility. "We have a choice to make," he said. "We can offer both humans and Rakaris the opportunity to undergo this transformation, but it must be voluntary. We won't force this on anyone." Alara nodded in agreement. "This ship, this unity, can be the starting point, a place where both our species can come together, learn, and grow." As the implications of their words sank in, the occupants of the room began to buzz with excitement and apprehension. The journey that had begun with an alien girl in heat and a human male had transformed into something far greater, a potential revolution in the very nature of their species. Outside the ship, the first messages from both human and Rakari space began to arrive, filled with questions, demands, and offers of cooperation. The saga of unity was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.